Monica.
And we together are Empowered Enneagram.
That's us.
Welcome.
Welcome. It's our first podcast episode and our first YouTube video.
We're doing them at the same time. I wish we had a video to show you our backdrop that we have going on here. It's quite legit looking.
Yeah, I took a picture of it and I posted it on Instagram as like a little tease because we haven't officially announced this yet at the time of this recording. But we're really excited about this podcast and this YouTube channel. It has been in the works for years.
Long time.
Yeah.
So Monica and I started Empowered Enneagram in 2015. We are both certified in the Enneagram embodiment tradition. And we'll tell you a little bit about who we are and where we came from and our stories with the Enneagram.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so to get started, I'm Monica. My last name is LeBlanc, and I am a therapist by training, and I live here in Asheville, actually right outside of Asheville, a little small town called Weaverville, and I run a private practice where I work with individuals and couples, all adults. I work primarily with folks who struggle with attachment ruptures and have trouble setting boundaries for themselves. So that's a big part of my work, and I use the Enneagram in my work a lot because it helps create kind of a compassionate language and framework for folks and helps them really connect and learn about each other in a way that isn't so personal and so attacking. So that's kind of my work self. My personal self, outside of the office, I do a lot of yoga, do a lot of reading, I'm a vegan, you know, all the if you live anywhere near Asheville or you know anything about Asheville, there's a lot of very Asheville qualities about me. I'm a real spiritual person, I pull a tarot card every day, so, you know, all that jazz. But really happy to be here, really excited about recording this for you guys, about us working together. Like I said, this has been in the works for years, and we've had people ask us for years, when are you guys going to do a podcast? So we're finally doing it. And
we are. Ta-da!
That's a little about me, and I'm going to let Hannah introduce herself.
So my name is Hanna Woody. I'm also a licensed professional counselor, and I have a private practice here in Asheville, North Carolina as well. And I work with adults and children. With adults, I specialize in trauma and anxiety, and with kids, I work primarily with anxiety. The Enneagram is a huge part of my practice. I have been studying the Enneagram since I was 19 years old. It fascinated me from the very beginning, and after getting trained in it and feeling pretty confident in knowing the nuances of the types and how specifically the types show up therapeutically. When I am doing therapy with folks, the things that they tend to want to work through almost always are their Enneagram, part of their Enneagram fixation, whether they know about the Enneagram or not. So I really enjoy introducing it to people and using it as a part of therapy. I just feel like it accelerates self-growth because the Enneagram is a guide to you. It's a guide to what gets in your way, what acts as a barrier to you. It helps you see your own patterns in a way where you can be objective about your behavior and your thoughts and your feelings, instead of living in your thoughts and your feelings as if they are the truth.
More on that later.
Yes.
More to come.
So Monica and I, we are a bit of a dynamic duo. We are business partners / best friends. Monica and I officially met when we were in grad school to both become counselors.
Hannah was forced upon me.
We had a mutual friend introduce us who basically was like, you guys need to be friends.
You're going to be friends.
You're going to be friends because I want you to be.
It's happening.
And Monica and I weren't too sure about each other when we first met. But it wasn't too long after that we discovered that we had a lot in common.
We're soulmates.
And that we're very, really good friends now.
Yep. So we hang out not just to do Enneagram stuff, but we like do, best friend stuff. We like go shopping and, get our nails done. And actually we haven't done any of those things in a long time. But we like go on hikes and we do stuff. We get glasses of wine and we do stuff like that together. So we are best friends in addition to being business partners, which is super fun. If you don't have a business with your bestie, I highly recommend that you make that happen because it's really, really great. Yeah.
And if you both know the Enneagram and you're using it to process the natural ups and downs of a business, then you should know the Enneagram because it's really helpful. We get to be like, whoa, I'm a 4 on the Enneagram, and Monica sometimes will be like, Hannah, you're 4ing out all over the place. We need to get this thing done, and you're trying to get it perfect, and you care too much about aesthetics. You're putting too much time into it. And it's really helpful because I don't just hear that as a criticism. I hear it as, oh, that's my Enneagram type. Yeah, she's right. Okay, how do I work through this?
Remember that compassionate framework and language I was talking about? It works in business partnership too. So we've both been able to really experience that. So the business was born. We're going to tell you a little bit about how we came to this together. We met in grad school and we went through graduate school together, both to be counselors. I think Hannah graduated maybe a semester before me. But we... soon after graduate school, Hannah went through her Enneagram training with an Enneagram school that's here in Asheville that is really amazing. Our teacher is incredible. And I remember that we started talking about the Enneagram and using it kind of as you were going through your training, and then I went through my training, and about midway through my training, you and I started doing workshops for people just for free. We would do it like in exchange for a donut or something.
Yeah, I kept talking to people about the Enneagram, and Monica has such a smart business head, and she's a real go-getter. I'm not as much of a go-getter. I'm a little slower when it comes to that. But Monica was like, Hannah, like all these people are asking us to do workshops and do presentations. Let's do one. And so we just started doing them. I think our very first presentation, at least the first couple, were all for mental health agencies. They were all personal connections that we knew. And Monica, I was already certified in the embodiment tradition at that point. And then Monica got her certification shortly after that. And so we've been teaching and doing workshops since 2015. And the thing that I love about teaching is that I learn so much every single time I do a presentation and I interact with people. It's really exciting to share this model. I think the Enneagram is life-changing. And I think it's very special to be able to share that with people. As a therapist, it feels like a bit of a cheat sheet or like a map that I can help people navigate. And I just love it.
Yeah. It's been life-changing. I mean, really, when Hannah brought the Enneagram to my house, I was hosting a barbecue, of course, because I'm a self-pres too with a 3-wing, in case you can't tell, because I'm a poof. I got a 2 poof.
She does have it. Twos have a lot of things like this going on.
Yeah, like some kind of like ball on the hat, some kind of like poofy hairstyle, like gotta get, I'm real short, so I gotta be a little taller. It adds a couple inches. But anyway, when Hannah brought the Enneagram to a barbecue that I was hosting, it was my first exposure to it. She kind of like shoved this book in my face, open to the 2 chapters. She's like, I think you should read this. And I was like, okay, I'm like hosting a barbecue, but I'd had a beer and I was like, all right, I'm gonna sit outside. I think it was like a warm May day, and
it was the wisdom of the Enneagram.
Yes.
Riso Hudson, and that was the big blue book she's referring to.
Yeah. In case you haven't, if this is your first exposure to the Enneagram, you need to pause this video or this podcast and get on Amazon right now and order the wisdom of the Enneagram, because that is a great way to start to learn a little bit about the Enneagram. And it's a good book to kind of flip to your type and read about it. And good exposure. So we'll put a link to that in our show notes for you.
Or another really great beginner book is The Complete Enneagram by Beatrice Chestnut. Both of those excellent starter books.
We really like that. So we'll post some links to those in the show notes. But anyway, back to my story, Hannah. So Hannah kind of shoved this book in my face, and I started reading the chapter about 2, and I was like, oh my God, who is this person that has been in my head? It resonated with me immediately, and ever since then, I remember feeling a little bit like a little relieved, a little validated, a little normalized in kind of my everyday experience of things that go on in my head. And also there was this sense of like, oh, that feels really uncomfortable to be seen in that way. And like for Hannah to know, right? For Hannah to even know that those were kind of the inner workings of who I was. So my experience with finding my type was really powerful and really quick. But I know that not everybody has that experience, and I'm going to let Hannah talk a little bit about kind of her experience finding her type too.
Oh, it took years. My first Enneagram book was The Wisdom of the Enneagram. It was gifted to me from a good friend, and he was like, you kind of seem like a 2, maybe some 9 in there, and I read about those types, and while I could relate to some of the aspects of the personality, they didn't feel like home. It didn't really feel like me. So I read about every single type. I did all of my research. When I first met my teacher, she was doing a workshop here in Nashville, and I was like, ooh, the Enneagram, maybe I can figure out my type. So I started going, and I ended up participating in her training program, which was a year-long certification program. And it was through that process that I discovered the Enneagram Self-Preservation 4. And
the Specialist 4, by the way.
It is the Specialist 4. And at that point, everything started to hit home. 4 was one of the types that I always threw out. Because if you read just the basic descriptions of 4, they are melancholy, they're sad, there's a lot of overt emotionality happening, and I don't think anybody would describe me as that.
Look at how bubbly and happy she is. Look at that face. So bubbly.
And when I was younger, my nickname was Smiley that my friends gave me.
Aww. And Smiley.
Yeah, and teachers always gave me the feedback of, Hannah, you have such a sunny, bright disposition. You're such a pleasure to have in class, and you're so positive. And there was nothing about the basic description of 4 that described that. So that's why I always threw 4 out. But once I read about the self-preservation 4, also called the enduring 4, it all started to make sense. I have just as much emotional turbulence and deep, dark pain and shame and wounding that 4s have, but I don't show it to others. It's not obvious on the outside. As you listen to our podcast, you'll hear more about what we call energetics, and the energetics of 4, which is that melancholy, sadness, that depth. A lot of times with self-preservation 4, it's a little more subtle, but someone who's very intuitive and paying attention can probably see it.
Probably pick that up. Plus, if you have a really deep knowledge of the subtypes too, then you'll know that sometimes the type doesn't present itself on the outside as clearly as maybe some of the more surface level definitions we'll go into. So we're really excited about this podcast. I want to prep you guys a little bit about kind of what you can look forward to. Today we're doing, in this first episode, just kind of an introduction to us. But we're going to go into some introduction to the Enneagram just in general. So if you're not familiar with the model, know that this series will give you a good grasp on kind of what it is and what it means and where it came from and things of that nature. And we're really excited to just kind of share with you a little bit about the types and a little bit about kind of how we work and what we do. speaking of what we do, Hannah, do you want to tell them a little bit about kind of what things we offer and what our company is about and that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
We, so our business, we're Empowered Enneagram, also the name of this podcast, coincidentally.
Oh my God, amazing.
And actually, like, the reason that we call it Empowered Enneagram is because the whole point of the Enneagram is self-work, self-knowledge, self-awareness. So you can develop loving kindness towards yourself, which goes to other people. And that's the whole point of the Enneagram. And that's why it's empowering and why we called it Empowered Enneagram. So
we wanted it to be something that was not just like, oh, I know my type and that's really great, end of story. We wanted people to really kind of take this model and make it accessible to them, and then have them really own who they are, integrate those patterns into kind of their daily life, and begin to develop awareness and develop a sense of knowing yourself that you can actually use. Not just like, this is who I am and that's the end of the story, but this is a part of who I am. These are some things that get in my way, and these are the ways in which I'm actively working to make myself a better version of myself. Because according to Hannah and I, we really believe that that's what makes the world better. So we're excited to bring you guys this information.
Yeah. So in addition to this podcast, what we do with the Enneagram, we're teachers. We host in-person trainings here in Asheville. We do trainings that just do the overview, the basics of the Enneagram. We have more advanced workshops where we go over the subtypes and wings and movement, and the deeper you go into the Enneagram, just the deeper and more complex it gets. So we do some workshops locally around that. We also do workshops that are specific to therapists or people who work in the mental health world, or people who do one-on-one kind of healing work with people. And we also do online courses. By the time this is launched, our first introductory course to the Enneagram is going to be active and online.
Oh yeah, we can't wait.
And we also, another big part of what we do is that we take this model and we teach it to businesses, or to organizations or groups of people who want to use it for their team development. A lot of companies that work with us are struggling to keep their talent that they have, and they want a system to be able to not only help their team members improve communication, but also, how does your team deal with conflict? How do you guys work through a problem?
How do you cultivate leadership with the team that you have, instead of, hiring and firing and doing all the, things that don't necessarily contribute to good morale?
Right. And this system isn't about finding the perfect personalities for your team. You probably already have a really good team. It's about bringing out the best in the team that you already have and helping those folks do this work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. More on that in later seasons, about how you can use the Enneagram in your work life to make it super stellar, to go from boring meetings to awesome times. That's my little corporate song. I think it needs work. What do you think? Maybe. So that's episode 1. Thanks for joining us. We're glad you're here.
Welcome.
It's gonna be great.